Okay, so before we proceed with the AR, we need to understand the O2C cycle. So AP forms part of your P2P, that is procure to pay cycle, whereas AR forms part of O2C cycle, which is order to cash. So at a high level, I'll give you an overview of order to cash. So in the case of P2P, we are actually purchasing the goods from the vendor. Whereas in the case of O2C cycle, it talks about selling of goods to the customer and receiving of the money from the customer. So it starts from the sales order or order management module through to AR to cash management to general ledger. So the main modules involved in the order to cash flow is order management, accounts receivable, cash management, and the general ledger. So obviously, as part of the training session, I will not be covering the order management. I'll be starting directly from the accounts receivable, but I'll just explain you what happens in the order management flow or under the order management module. So first in the order management module, it starts from something called sales quote, and then sales order, and the flow will be something like sales quote, sales order, AR invoice, AR receipt. Again, this one is optional. Cash management reconciliation is optional. Transfer to GL. So the first step is sales code. So we generally, we in the sense like the salesperson in the organization provides the sales codes to the prospective customers. So selling person or the salespersons are the people who goes into the market and try to find the prospective customers. And when they find any prospective customers, they actually depending on the customer requirement, they provide the sales code. Sales code is just a kind of a code saying that this is the amount and this is the item and this is the price, and this is the date, probable date when we should be able to deliver you something like that. So it is a responsibility of the salesperson to go into the market and find the prospective customers, and based on the customer requirement, the customer says that I'm expecting so and so product and so and so price. So based on that, the salesperson is going to provide the particular code. So we can create the sales code in the order management module, or most of the clients whatever I've seen is they use something called SFDC. Salesforce is another mini ERP. So Salesforce is very good for handling these codes and the sales orders. So they create the sales codes in the say SFDC ERP. So even in our current client, codes are created in the Salesforce ERP. And once the code is actually confirmed in the Salesforce, there is an integration between the Salesforce and Oracle. And based on the code, okay, code will be sent to Oracle, and based on the code, a sales order will be created. That is one way of creating a sales order. Other process would be forget about Salesforce. If you do not have any Salesforce, you can create the code directly in the order management module. And once the code is confirmed, you can actually convert the code into sales order. That is the other way. And the third option is, if you do not want to even use the directly sales code process in the order management, you can directly create the sales order. The reason why we need to create the sales order is, again, in the sales order there are a couple of steps. First we need to do something called booking of the sales order, and then once the sales order is booked, you need to get it approved, or approval is my optional, yeah. So once the sales order is booked, you need to actually ship the goods to the customer. There are other statuses within the sales order like awaiting shipping, picking, packing, and all those stuff. I'm not getting into those details. So at a high level, you book the sales order, ship the goods. As soon as you ship the goods, you send that information to your AR module via your AR interface, and then AR invoice is created. So obviously you can generate an invoice only once the goods are shipped to the customer. So in the order management, you are booking the sales order, shipping the goods, and then creating an invoice in the AR module. And if you do not use the sales order module, then you can directly create a manual invoice directly in the AR invoice. If you use the sales order module, then once the booking and shipping is done, once you run a program, then based on that particular program, it is going to send the information directly to your AR interface. And once you run a program in AR module, an invoice will be created in the AR module. And once the invoice is created, obviously it is our responsibility to get the money collected from the customer. And once the money is collected from the customer, you record that in the AR receipt screen. And if it is what you call electronic funds transfer, or if it's a kind of a check related thing, then you actually do a reconciliation with your cash management and then transfer the journal entries to GL. So this is the high level overview of the O2C flow, and we will be talking about these things in our training session. We will not get into these things. Okay, is that clear? Any questions here?
No.
Okay then. So with this in background, so now we'll start with the AR module. So like any other subledgers, before we start with the module, first thing is we need to create the responsibility. Create responsibility, assign the profile options to the responsibility, and then assign that particular responsibility to my user, and then start doing the configuration of the kind of system options, or other options which are related to that particular module. And then you should be able to proceed with the data entry of the invoices and the receipts. Okay, so first we'll start with the responsibility. So let me open my BL. The first thing is defining of responsibility. So the naming convention is accounts receivable, module name, super user, role, comma, Reliance cotton extraction INR. Okay, so here what I did is, as we have been performing our transactions under Reliance postpaid, which is falling under Reliance Communications. So just for a change, and there is a reason for that, I am using the Reliance cotton extraction, which is falling under different legal entity but the same ledger. Okay, so instead of again creating the AR under Reliance postpaid, we'll now try to what you call create the AR under Reliance cotton extraction, which is falling under Reliance textiles. So the operating unit for us is now Reliance cotton extraction. So the naming convention is accounts receivable, super user, Reliance cotton extraction, and INR is the ledger currency. So this is the naming convention of the responsibility. So where do we define the responsibility? System administrator. Sorry. Security responsibility define. I had already created this responsibility. I'll show you. Okay. So the again whatever we have followed for the other modules, like responsibility name, application name, responsibility key, which is a unique key, and then the data group is always standard. Application name is again receivables. The menu. So again, as we do not know what exactly is the menu to be used, you can just copy the menu from the seeded responsibilities provided by Oracle. These are receivables vision operations, and there are a couple of other seeded responsibilities. Copy that menu, okay, and the request group and other details. So all these details, most of these details, request group, menu, data group, everything you can copy it from the existing seeded responsibilities provided by Oracle. And if you want in future, you can customize these menus to exclude certain menus and functions from the responsibility. Okay. Created the responsibility, assign this particular responsibility to my user, and then I'll show you the profile option. Okay, so now can anybody tell me what will be the mandatory profile options for a subledger responsibility?
MO security profile and MO operating unit.
Uh, MO operating unit is enough. MO security profile is not mandatory. MO operating unit and GL data access set. So GL data access set is nothing but the ledger name. So the second is GL data access set is the ledger name. So you need to associate Reliance INR ledger. MO operating unit is Reliance cotton extraction, because This is the name of the operating unit. MO operating unit. Reliance cotton extraction. You can see GL data access set. Reliance INR ledger, and there are two more profile options. One is like as we are using a secondary ledger, so you need to associate SLA additional data access set. So the name itself says additional data access set. So additional ledger, which is nothing but your secondary ledger. So associate this, and also SLA enable data access set security in subledger. This also you need to say as yes. Can somebody tell me what is the significance of this profile option? I explained this in yesterday's session. Okay. So if you
The
do
role
not,
based one.
sorry.
Is it a role based one?
No, it is not related to role. If you do not select this particular, if you do not set this particular profile option as yes, what will happen is when you run your create accounting, it will show you in the list of values all the ledgers available in the system. The name itself says enable data access security in subledger. In subledger, whether you want to have the security of the data access set, that means you want to have an access of only that ledger which is assigned to you. So if you do not set this particular profile option, then in the drop down it will show all the ledgers. So that means you will be able to run create accounting for even for the other ledgers also. But you do not want to do that. Then set this particular profile option so that when you run your create accounting in the drop down, it will show you only this particular ledger. Okay. So these are the four profile options. And if you remember, like when we started with the AP module, I said that before we proceed with the operating unit, we need to run something called replicate seed data. Do you think that I need to run the replicate seed data once again?
Yes, sir.
No.
No, it's not.
You have to learn.
No, replicate data needs to be run only once, because when you run your replicate seed data, you are not running it for a particular subledger. You are running it once for all the subledgers. So when you run your replicate seed data, it will ask you to select just the operating unit. It will not ask you to select whether you are running it for AP and AR. As we have already run the replicate seed data for all the four operating units when we started with AP, now we need not to run the replicate seed data. I can
Okay.
show you that once again. Replicate C data will be run from the system administrator responsibility. View, request, submit new request, replicate C data. See here it is asking you to select only the operating unit. We have already ran it for the four operating units. So we need not now again proceed with the replicate C data. We can proceed.
Okay.
Okay. The third one is system options. Okay. As we have seen in AP, we got financial options, payable options. Similarly in AR we have got something called system options. So you need to first complete the system option, then only you should be able to proceed further. Okay. So this is the responsibility. Accounts receivable, supervisor, Reliance cotton extraction, INR, and setup system options. That's the navigation. Setup system options. Okay, so I had already completed this, but I will explain you. Okay, so if you observe here, I have used the company code of 02. Can anybody tell me why I used 02? In all our previous what do you call discussions for as far as AP is concerned, I have used 01.
Because this operating unit is tagged to 02 ledger, which is a textile, Reliance
Exactly.
textile ledger.
Company.
So for the Reliance postpaid and Reliance prepaid, which are tagged to Reliance Communications, and for Reliance Communication, our company code is 01. Reliance Cotton Extraction, Reliance Cloth Manufacturing are tagged to Reliance Textiles, where the company code is 02, and hence we should use the 02. Okay. So this is the operating unit name, ledger name. Okay. As you when you go to this, when you come to this particular screen, automatically these two will be defaulted. We need to start our setups from here. Okay. The first thing is realized gain, realized loss accounts. So whenever there is a foreign currency, whenever you enter your foreign currency transaction, and when there is a what do you call exchange rate differences between the foreign currency and functional currencies, then system will take that to your realized gain or realized loss account. And this is the tax account. So the default, sorry, okay. So tax account is again again these are all the default accounts. At a data entry level, in some cases you can make some changes to the accounts. Okay, tax account is the default tax account what you want the system to calculate. Cross currency rate type is whenever you create a cross currency transactions. When I say cross currency transaction, it is nothing but a cross currency receipt. So cross currency receipt is nothing but you create an invoice in one currency but receive the invoice in a different currency. It is not possible in AP. In AP, your invoice currency and payment currency should be same, but whereas in AR it's different. In AR, your invoice currency and receipt currency can be different. So if you use your invoice currency and receipt currency are different, so those are called cross currency transactions. And in the cross currency transactions, again system need a exchange rate type to be used in order to do the conversions, and the exchange rate type is the conversion. Corporate is the exchange rate type. And if you remember in GL, you define the exchange rates under the particular conversion rate type, and that is what is the rate type we are mentioning here. And the next one is the cross currency rounding account. Again, when you are creating your cross currency transaction, if there is any rounding differences, that goes to this cross currency rounding account. Again, most of these things you better appreciate once we get into the actual transactions. Header rounding account is again only for the invoices. Again, for the foreign currency invoices, when system is trying to convert it from foreign currency to functional currency, if there are any rounding differences for the pennies, so that will go to this header rounding difference account. And this is the another important checkbox, automatic journal input. So whenever you run accounting to transfer the data from your what we call subledgers to GL, so it should automatically get transferred to GL and get imported to GL. In order to do that, you need to check the checkbox of automatic journal import.
Arvind, what is the difference between cross-currency rounding account and header rounding account? I
Okay.
think both will deal with multiple currencies only.
No, cross currency rounding account is used in those scenarios wherein you are trying to create a receipt in a currency which is different from the invoice currency. Take an example, invoice currency is INR. Okay, you are creating a receipt in USD. Okay, so when you are creating a receipt in USD, the receipt currency is USD, whereas the invoice currency is INR. So that is called cross currency transaction. And if there are any kind of a rounding differences in the receipt, the rounding differences go to the cross currency rounding account. And as far as the header rounding account is concerned, you are creating an invoice. Okay, invoice is in the say GBP currency, but your functional currency is INR. So this is a scenario of foreign currency invoice. Forget about receipt, only just the invoice. So if you create your foreign currency invoice, that is the invoice in the USD, then system will try to convert that from USD to INR. When it is trying to convert from USD to INR, if there are any kind of a rounding differences, then system will use this header rounding difference account. Okay.
Okay. So basically we can say cross-currency rounding account is more on the
Receipt.
receipts.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas header rounding account is more on the invoices.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just covering all the important fields. Obviously, it is highly not possible to explain the significance of each and every checkbox. So if you do that, then obviously our sessions will not be sufficient. So I'm actually trying to concentrate on all the important fields. Okay. And under the transactions and customer, the first checkbox is allow changes to printed transactions. So whenever you create an invoice, there's a program called invoice print selected invoice. That's the standard programs. You can print that particular invoice, you can print a copy of that particular invoice. And there is a functionality that, I mean, like what system understands is as soon as you create an invoice, you are printing, and once you print, automatically flag gets set in the backend table. So backend table updates that particular transaction is as already printed, because here system is understanding that as soon as you print the invoice, you are sending that particular invoice copy to the customer. So obviously when you are sending an invoice copy to the customer, you are not ideally supposed to make any changes to that particular invoice. But for some practical business reasons, you have printed the invoice, but you have not yet sent it to the invoice to the customer, but still you have realized that there are some mistakes in the invoice and you want to make some changes on the particular invoice. So this checkbox will help you allow changes to printed transactions. So if you check this checkbox, system will allow you to make changes to the printed transaction. Allow transaction deletion as soon as a transaction is created, as long as it is not accounted and not transferred to GL. In a normal world, if you check this checkbox, system will allow you to delete the transaction. So once you bring up that particular transaction, this particular cross button will be enabled. If you do not check this checkbox, then as soon as your transaction is saved, and that's it. Whether you have printed, whether you have accounted or transferred to GL, system will not check any of those things. As soon as you enter the transaction and save it, that's it. It will not allow you to delete the transaction. Next one is the show billing number. So there is a concept of something called consolidated billing. That's the term which is used in 11A, but in R12 we call it as a balance forward billing. So if you want to use that particular consolidated billing functionality, check this particular checkbox. And in the transactions window, when we get into the transaction, I will show you. There will be two tabs. One is the normal transaction number, and another one is the consolidated billing number. Consolidated billing concept at a high level is you want to group all the invoices for a particular customer into one consolidated billing number, and then you can run some reports, and by just putting that consolidated billing number, you will be able to generate all the invoices which falls under the particular consolidated billing number. And the tax invoice printing option is only like whenever you are printing a tax invoices, what you want to print in the tax invoice, whether you want to there are some formats here, European tax format, and whether you want to print total tax amount or sum of taxes or something like that. So just leave the default value. And this document number generation level is if you are using the document number functionality. I mean, there are some couple of steps for that. Then at what stage you want the document number? Document number is nothing but system generated transaction number. Irrespective of the transaction number, whatever you enter, okay, there is one more document number which is nothing but a system generated document number, or like in a normal accounting terms, you can call it as a voucher number. Okay, if you want to use the document sequencing functionality, then at what stage you want the document number to be generated, when you are completing the invoice or when you are saving the invoice. And what else? These things, I mean, assess late charges is basically if you want to use the late charges. Again, there are a couple of steps for the late charges functionality. It's basically you want the system to
Arvind, now we are using document sequence number, no?
No, we are not using document sequence number. It's nothing but, I mean, it's only just like you need to go to GL and enable the document sequencing for the particular category for the with the application of receivables, and then system will start generating the document sequencing number.
What is the usual usage of that? Because I know document sequence number in some of the reports will make a critical reference, right?
You see, a document sequence number is actually a kind of a system generated number which will follow a particular unique sequence, irrespective of the as far as the transaction number is concerned. It could be any number. Okay, in some cases transaction number is again system generated number. In some cases transaction numbering, it all depends on how do we set. In some cases transaction number is the alphanumeric number. In some cases transaction number is manually entered by us using a different sequence. But if you use the document sequence functionality, then it will be a proper sequence number. And again, when you are setting up with the document sequence, there is some other functionality called gapless number. If you use the gapless number, what will happen is, going back to the running notes. So let us assume your document sequence number starts from say 01. Okay, you have created invoice for 01. It is completed, transferred to GL. Good. Second, you have created another invoice where the document sequence number is say 02. Okay, you have deleted the invoice. And again, you have created one more invoice where the document sequence number will be 003. So if you go to the front end and try to query the invoices, you'll be able to see only this one and this one. But in the background, system has already stored 002 against the invoice which is already deleted. You can run some reports to find out what are those invoices which are deleted. It's a gapless number. So just from an audit trial perspective, like what are the invoices which you have created and what are the invoices which you have deleted. So that is the another reason why some people will go for the document sequencing, especially gapless number. If I remember it correctly, in some of the European countries, using of the document sequence number, that too gapless document sequence is mandatory.
Yeah, my question is like typically why it is useful, because it's anyway system generated number, and that system generation is based on our configuration or a setup to our system. But how it is useful for other world, like who is actually receiving the invoice you generated
No, no, no,
to
no. That's what I'm
customer?
telling. It has got nothing to do with the customer. It is only from our internal audit trial perspective. Document number is only for our audit trial perspective. Customer do not have what you call any say on the document sequencing number. He do not even care whether we use the document sequence or not. It is from our audit trial perspective.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So okay, so late charges is basically, if you want to use the late charges functionality, then system will calculate the late charges invoice if the invoice become overdue. That is like you have created an invoice for say 1,000 rupees and you send it to the customer, ask him to pay within say 30 days, and if it do not pay within 30 days, then you can do some kind of setups and create the late charges invoices, so that system will calculate interest on those invoices because the invoice is not paid on due date. 90% of the customers, 90% of the clients, whatever I've seen, will not use this particular function. The reason being, you want to maintain a good relationship with the customer. You cannot directly say that if you do not pay within 30 days, then I'm going to charge you an interest on that. You try to do follow up. There are a lot of scenarios wherein even though we say 30 days, the invoice may not be even paid up to 6 months or 1 year because of various reasons. But in order to maintain a good relationship with the customer, generally we will not create these late charges or the interest invoices. Okay, and this is with regard to auto invoice. So whenever we are sending, getting the data into AR from any other external legacy system, or or when we are importing the invoices from say sales order. So based on the O2C cycle, once the sales order is shipped, if you want to generate the invoices, then we use something called auto invoice program. As I had explained earlier, when you get the data from any other legacy system, that is the external system, or whether when you get the data from any other modules within the Oracle, it needs to go through the interface table. Similarly, when the data is coming into AR through other modules, like order management is one module, and there is something called service contract, that is another module. You can also get the data into AR from project accounting module. So when you are getting the data from any of these three modules, the data will be first pushed into your AR interface table. So AR interface table is actually kind of a layer protecting the AR module. So first the data gets pushed into your AR interface table, and then the standard auto invoice program will pull the data from your AR interface. It will perform all the required validations. If there are any issues with the data which is being pulled over from the interface table, then it will uh, reject those error. It will reject those records, and it will throw an appropriate error message there. So it will do a kind of a policing of the data which is being coming into AR. It will perform all the required validations and then import that into our system. So this is basically uh, the first checkbox is purge interface table. As soon as the data is imported successfully, whether you want to purge those interface tables. Obviously, if the data is imported successfully, then you need to check this checkbox. Even though you check this checkbox, it doesn't mean that it is going to, you are saying purge interface table, but system will not delete or purge the unprocessed records or error records. It will only what you call delete the processed record. As the records are already processed, then there is no point in keeping those records in the interface table. So you can check this particular checkbox. So most of the clients, we actually check this checkbox of purge interface table. And these two are again just internally used by your auto invoice program, just for the performance improvement of your auto invoice program. So again, this maximum memory in bytes, it all depends on how many records you are actually importing into Oracle, and what is your database memory space and all the stuff. So this is actually in any implementation project, this is kind of a trial and error basis, especially even in our project, like when we went live with R12. So of course, in R12 we did not face any issues, but in 11i, when our client went live with 11i a couple of years back, so this maximum memory in bytes, it's trial and error. During UAT and SIT, we tried with different options depending on the number of records which are importing. So first we tried with some 15,000, then 20,000, and then 100,000, and so on. And now I don't remember exactly what was the value, but anyways, that's a trial and error method. So depending on your number of records which you're trying to process to your auto invoice, and depending on your database space, you'll need to set that particular value. And this log file message level is up to what level of detail you want in the auto invoice, just for our debugging purpose whenever there are any issues in the auto invoice program. Okay, I mean, generally your output will give you required information, but for some other debugging purpose, if you want to have some other information, then you can set this log file message level. I think it starts from 0 to 10. If you set the log file message value of say 0 or 1, then you will have a minimum information in log file. If you enter that log file message value of say 10, then you will have maximum information. But again, bear in mind that you should not even set that to a higher value, because that may also have an impact on your performance of your auto invoice program, because you are asking the system to write the that particular level of details in your auto invoice log file, which may not be required on a daily basis. So generally we set it to say 2 or 3, but on any particular scenario, whenever your auto invoice is failing for some specific reason, and whenever we raise it with an SR with Oracle, so that's when Oracle support engineer will ask us to set this value to say a level of say 9 or 10, and then they'll ask us to run the auto invoice, and once he get the required debug log file, then he'll ask us to change it to the lower value, which will be say 2 or 3. Okay, and the next thing is with regard to customer numbering and site numbering. So whenever we are creating a customer, whether you want the system to generate the automatic customer numbering, site numbering, so obviously we should say we want to go for the automatic customer numbering and automatic site number. If you do not check these checkboxes, then you need to manually enter the customer number or site number. Ideally, we will not go with that particular option. We want system to generate the automatic customer number and site number. And there is something called grouping rule. So default is a grouping rule which is provided by Oracle, and there are a couple of other grouping rules which are created, I think, by different people. Some of these are actually standard. These are standard projects, and OKL are the standard, and a couple of things, I think, global intercompany is a standard one, and a couple of these are actually created by different people. So grouping rule is how do you want to group the transactions when you are getting the data from the external system. So when you are getting the data from any other external system, or when you are getting the data from the other Oracle module, how do you want to group that particular data? As far as the other modules are concerned, say for order management, there is, I think, already a default grouping rule, and for the AGIS, Advanced Global Intercompany System, also we have got a default grouping rule of global intercompany. So in the system options, we are specifying what is my default grouping rule. Again, this particular grouping rule will default to the transaction sources whatever you have created, and in this transaction source you can actually change that grouping rule. Okay, when we get into the transaction source, then I'll also explain a little bit more on the grouping rule.
Arvind, this grouping rule is related to the any show billing number. Like you said that you will consolidate the billing number.
No, that is different. This is different. That show billing number, consolidated billing is only just grouping of the invoices. So that is different, and this is different. This is, I mean, that is basically once this consolidated billing is basically once the invoices are created. How do you want to group the invoices? And that is only for a specific customer. But this particular grouping rule is when you are getting the data from your interface table. Okay, so in the interface table, when your auto invoice is importing them from the interface table, that's when this particular grouping rule is used by the auto invoice program. Okay, so this is before importing of the data into AR, and this consolidated billing is after the invoices are created. How do you want to group the customer invoices?
Okay.
Now going to the claims, I mean, again, this particular tab or these details are used only if you are using Oracle Transport Management OTM module. I mean, I have never used that particular module, so generally in all my clients, these particular values are just as is. We did not set any of these things. Under the miscellaneous tab, Again, couple of things. One is the split amount. Again, there is something called collection effectiveness report. So in the collection effectiveness report, this particular value and this value is actually used. So what is this value split amount? So basically, if you generally say that roughly your average or your highest or like sorry rather your average invoice value in any period is roughly say 10,000 rupees example, then this particular split amount of 10,000 will be taken into consideration by collection effectiveness report. And when you run your collection effectiveness report, it is going to just show you how your invoices are looking like how many invoices are there which are below 10,000 and how many invoices are there above 10,000. It's only just used in the particular report and we do not have any other significance. If you say your split amount is at 25,000, then it will show how many invoices are there below 25,000 and other couple of other details and how many invoices are there above 25,000. It's only just for your analysis purpose. Discount basis, if you want to use the discount functionality, and what basis you want the system to calculate the discount, whether you want to calculate the discount on the entire invoice amount, whether you want to calculate the invoice on only lines amount, whether you want to calculate the discount on lines, tax and freight, or lines and tax. Couple of options are available there. Days in
Arvind, one thing, Arvind, discount will be come only with respect to the order management. Why it at the AR level?
Good question. I know, like for the order management, you can use some discount functionality. But what if you are not using order management? You can very well create an invoices in AR. Am I right?
Yes, you can create.
Then and in within the year, if you want to use the discount functionality.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I got you.
So
Yep,
it is not so it is not mandatory that we need to always use the order management module. There could be some scenarios wherein we may not be using the order management module. Generally, order management module is used by those companies which are actually shipping the goods. If there are some companies, okay, where they do not ship any goods, they only, I mean, they deal only in services. They do not deal any goods, especially your software companies. They deal only in the services, rendering of the services. They do not ship any goods. They provide services to the customers. So those kind of clients may not go for the service, what do you call this, order management module. They directly go for the AR module.
Okay.
Okay. Days sales outstanding calculation. Again, this is called DSO. So again, there is a calculation in the collection effectiveness report, and in the collection effectiveness report, they use some calculation. So I can give you the formula for that. Okay, so there's a formula called total outstanding receivables divided by total sales for last DSO days. So which is nothing but total sales for last 90 days multiplied by 90. So some calculation is used in that report. What is the name of the report? I made a note of that. Yeah, collection effectiveness indicator report. So again, that particular value is used only in that particular report. So if I say this has say 60 days, then in the formula it will be like total my accounts receivable balance divided by total sales for the last 60 days multiplied by 60. So they're just trying to see how like what is my average outstanding uh, days of the invoices. And then write off limits. So when you want to write off receipts, again when I explain you the write off functionality, you'll better appreciate this. So what is my write off limits? I'm just saying minus 100 to plus 100. So I should be able to write off any receipt between minus 100 and plus 100. And whether you want to allow the discount on the partial payments. So when you say discount on partial payment, out of say 10,000 rupees of outstanding invoice, say 4,000 is already received and 6,000 is outstanding payment, but based on your discount rules, whether you still want a discount to be allowed on that particular partial payment. And couple of other check boxes, like when you are printing your AR invoices, what should be whether you want the remit to address to be printed, and whether you want the system to print the billing location for receipts, and a couple of other things. And this is auto receipts. So if when you are creating a receipts in AR module using your automatic receipts functionality, if you use something called automatic receipts functionality, that is creating of receipts automatically based on some rules, or creating of receipts automatically from the auto logbox or from other external file, then at what stage you want to commit or save those records. It's again just to improve the performance of the automatic receipts program. After every 500 records, I want the system to what you call commit. And a couple of other options like what is my default country whenever you go to some forms, and what is my default source of territory, and what is chargeback due date, and other one is the application rule set. So application rule set, again autocast rule set, again these two are actually used when you are using your automatic receipts. When if you create your manual receipt, then obviously all these things will not come into picture. And in the current training session, I will not be able to show you automatic receipts because we do not have any external file through which we can import the receipts. We'll go ahead with the manual receipts. So this is with regard to the
Before closing this, Arvind, what is the auto cache rule set here?
okay, auto cache rule set. Can you click on this drop down? So auto cache rule set, we got a couple of different auto cache rule sets. We are picking up standard. So let me go to, and in the drop down you can see all the auto cache. There is some other screen wherein you define your auto cache rule set, and that is coming here. Okay, let me go to that particular screen. So ours is a standard. So the auto cache rule set is, or you can go for the other. When you get a receipt from the customer, especially when you are using automatic receipts, okay, there are some couple of scenarios wherein you do not have the invoice number against which you want to apply that particular receipts. Then you want the system to use some logic to apply that particular receipts to the open outstanding invoices. So if you use, say, take an example, let me pick up some other example. Okay, so if you use this particular account, clear the account, apply oldest first. So what it is saying is, first apply the oldest invoice first. Okay, when you say apply the oldest invoice first, there is one particular invoice which is due on, say, 30th of September. There is another invoice which is due on 15th of September. There is another invoice which is due on 1st of September. Now when you get an receipt for, say, 10,000 rupees, to which invoice I need to first apply? I need to apply to the oldest invoice first. So that means I need to apply that particular 10,000 to an invoice which is due on 1st of September. If there is still any balance, then try to apply that to an invoice which is outstanding as on 15th of September. If there is still any balance, then try to apply that to the invoice which is due on 30th of September. So you got so many different rules. So you use these rules to apply your invoice to the apply your receipt to the invoice. Again, this is used only for the automatic receipts. If you are creating a manual receipt, then you are just pulling up the invoice and you are trying to apply the receipt to the invoice. Does it make sense?
Yes, Arvind. Yeah. So in the rules, there you are using the multiple rules. So you are prioritizing the rule by rule. Is that correct?
Yes. So if you look at that, the number one, so first that particular rule will come into picture, and then it goes to the second rule, and then third rule, and so on.
Okay. One more question. In the system options, one more thing, Arvind, that this will be set up at the operating unit level and which will be across the all the customers. Is that correct?
Yes, you can see system options is at operating unit level.
Okay. Okay.
And
And
again,
in the miscellaneous. Okay,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, so as I said that again, it's an operating unit level, and couple of these things will default to your customer or customer side. It's the same functionality whatever we have seen in AP. Financials are payable options. From financials or payable options, it goes to supplier, and from supplier it goes to supplier side. Supplier side it goes to your invoice. So similarly, even in AR, system options, from system options it goes to customer, and from customer it goes to customer side, and from customer side it comes to the transactions or the invoices. So
Okay. Okay.
couple of these things are available at customer side. There you can make the changes, and the updated values will get defaulted to your invoices.
Okay. In the miscellaneous tab, require a salesperson is there. What exactly that will do?
Okay, if I check this particular checkbox of required salesperson, when you go to your transaction screen, I'll just open the transaction screen, just show you that field. If you check that particular checkbox, salesperson should be somewhere in the, yeah. So this becomes mandatory. So you need to mandatory enter the salesperson. So generally you use the salesperson functionality if you are using your order management. So it is just to give a credit to the person or salesperson or the salesman who has brought that particular order, so that there is some other calculations in your order management saying that if there are say 100 orders and out of 100 orders, say this particular salesperson is actually name of a person here. Okay, so out of say 100 orders, so if Narendra is assigned for 10 orders and say Niranjan is assigned for another say 20 orders, so Narendra will be paid commission based on those 10 orders and Niranjan will be paid commission based on 20 orders. And if you check that particular checkbox, then mandatorily you need to associate a salesperson whenever you are creating a transactions. So let us assume that you are not using order management module. Okay, you are using only just AR. Okay, but you just want to associate an invoice to a salesperson. Then check that particular checkbox of require salesperson. In this particular screen, click on the drop down, select your name and save it. And at the end of the day, you can build your own custom reports to find out how many invoices are associated with are linked to Narendra, and then do a calculation outside the system. I don't think so there is any sales credit calculation within AR. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we are done with the system options, and
Okay,
before
Arvind, in the system options, uh, we have setups for receipts integration, right?
one second, let me just go to the system options. Setup. Okay, which one are you referring to?
Uh, can you go to claims? Somewhere I see Lockbox. Yeah, Lockbox and post quick cash claim. Yeah, this one. This is primarily for receipt import, right? To AR.
No. So this, I mean, so this is basically, even though it says Lockbox and Post Quick Patch program, yes, Lockbox and Post Quick Patch programs are for the AR automatic receipts, but this particular claim functionality can be enabled only if you use OTM. That's what your documentation says. Okay, so these checkboxes doesn't mean that you are actually enabling your Lockbox or Post Quick Patch. Okay, Auto Lockbox has got some other setups. I can just show you at a high level. I'll not be able to do that. There are
No,
some.
is it covered as part of this training for the Lockbox? How we need to
No.
enable that feature?
No. You can just go through your table of contents. It is we are not covering the auto logbox because we do not have any auto logbox file. How can we actually cover that?
Okay, at least in the configurations perspective, like how it should actually looks like.
No, there are a lot of things for the auto logbox. You need to configure the transmission. What do you call? There's something called
Formats, right?
yeah, logbox transmission. Where is that? Maintain logbox transmission data. That is the logbox interface. You need to do a couple of settings in the what do you call receipt classes, and then couple of settings with regard to transmission formats, and then you need to get a file, build integration, and then run your auto logbox program, which will push the data into your post quick cache tables, and then run the post quick cache program, which will create the receipts.
Receipts.
Okay, so there are all these couple of things are there.
But but in the current real world and in the latest real world, right? Are they using Lockbox? Any clients are preferring to enable this feature, or it is an outdated feature?
It's not exactly outdated. There are a couple of clients who may be using autolog, but the problem is like there are two things in order to import the data. Okay, one is the autolog box, and the other one is the receipt API. Okay, whatever I have seen in most of the clients is they started with the autolog box, but there are a lot of practical challenges, a lot of maintenance issue with your autolog box. because you need to get a file from the bank in a particular format. Again, you need to pay something to the banker to to get the file, and there are a couple of other things if you want to use your auto lockbox functionality. And it is receipt API is very pretty straightforward. You can very well use it. So I have seen in two to three of my clients, they started with auto lockbox, a lot of practical challenges faced, got rid of that, started using the receipt API. Of course, there are some what do you call disadvantages with the receipt API, but there are a lot of more advantages with the receipt API compared to auto logbox. There are a lot of setups you need to do, a lot of coordination which you need to do with external system, and maintenance issues, and there are and the performance issues with auto logbox, and hence we have gone with the receipt API.
No, Arvind,
Okay.
what is the difference?
Okay, in the case of receipt API, it is straight away through your public. I think it's a public API provided by Oracle. You are able to create your receipts, which is pretty straightforward. Auto logbox is basically you are bringing a kind of a interface layer. As far as the receipt API is concerned, we don't have any interface. So generally, you use auto logbox when you get a receipt data in a kind of a flat file, whether it could be a bank or some other system. Okay, you read the flat file. Okay, do some kind of a validations and build the data and bring over the data into some interface table, which will be post quick cache tables, and run your post quick cache program, which will create your receipts. So both are doing the same functionality, but technically there are differences between your auto logbox and receipt API. And if you ask customer, I mean, customer does not bother whether you use auto logbox or the receipt API, unless until you say that building of auto logbox will cost you. When I say customer here, I'm talking about our client. Okay, unless until we say that building of auto logbox will cost you say $100,000, but whereas the receipt API will cost you only say $10,000, something like that.
Yeah, just
Okay,
to
no,
add on, Pradeep, for the logbox, the critical part is the maintaining of that format. So one client can have one format, another client can have another format, and like Arvind mentioning, right, the format maintenance is to be configured in our system to use that feature. So that is where the challenge, and based on that format, and our coding has to be changed to import the data into interface table and layer it to quick cache interface tables in the program. So that is the complexity involved in the logbox. Uh,
Yeah.
Proceed. You're saying something, Arvind. Just want to add to Pradeep's question, right? Typically for this logbox, whoever enable, right? My understanding is the customers primarily into the financial services where they want to maintain high secure in terms of data to share. Is that the reason why they go for logbox? Because as you mentioned, there are different layers and coordination is required, and that way they can cover the security,
I mean,
not to open it up.
it could be various reasons. It may not be that only financial institutions. I have seen one of my previous client who is airlines in Australia. Even they thought of
Mhm.
going for auto logos, but because of various reasons, we put that particular project on hold. But I mean, after we left that particular project, I'm not sure what has happened. But even there, before I left that particular project, we started with this auto lock box. That's airlines.
okay. Arvind, why I'm asking is, see, in our project, we use the direct receipt API for some of the intercompany receipts,
Mm-hmm.
and we use the Lockbox for the bank related receipts. I mean, we have the statement loader and also the Lockbox
Yeah, yeah.
thing. So yeah, I mean, because I maintain both of them,
Mm-hmm.
so we see issues with the receipt API, and also we see issues with the Lockbox. Yeah, Lockbox, we understand most of the time it is based on the statement number or
Mm-hmm.
mismatch or something like that, more on the format. But whereas the receipt API, maybe it is because of the interface design and all, but it's like more or less similar kind of issues in both of the things. So
Yeah,
that's why I was just asking.
yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So I had explained to you based on my experience. So everybody has got his own experience, right? So in your experience, it all depends on like how many, what is the frequency of your APIs or your logbox, what is the complexity. So depending on that, there will be issues, right? So I could even take a scenario wherein like my auto logbox in my current client could be a very simple auto logbox, so I may not be facing any issues. But ask the same person to some other guy who has implemented a complex auto logbox wherein they get so many different files and there are so many different issues there. So it all depends on the experience whatever you have faced.
Okay, and one more thing is Niranjan was mentioning, right, so that based on the bank format, I think it will change. So is there a way that we can use the same logbox or the direct receipt API with multiple banks?
I think, let's see, my understanding, if I remember it correctly, you need to do some kind of setup, but maybe you can use the same format. See, if there are two different banks, okay, who are providing the logbox in the same format, I think you should be able to use. But from your setup perspective, I think it should take very less time, okay, because it's the same format. So you for with your first bank, you have already checked so many different validations. You have already fixed so many different bugs, okay, based on your code or integration. Then for the second bank, you may not be spending so much time. But I think if I remember it correctly, maybe you should be able to use. But you need to make some changes in somewhere in the configuration so that you ensure that the first file comes from the first bank and second file comes from the second bank.
Okay, okay, got it.
Arvind, just to add on to that, but it's not related to receivables. I somehow missed out to raise this point yesterday in AP. Uh, Similar to this concept of importing receipts or transactions,
Mhm.
in AP we have something called EDI gateway or XML gateways, where we can import the invoices into the payables,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I'm not sure whether if you might have come across in your experience.
Mhm.
Uh, do we have any difference in the configurations how to enable those integrations to the AP module? Like
I
let's say XML gateway. XML gateway, there is a feature I believe Oracle has provided to import invoices via XML gateway.
Mhm.
But I'm really not sure how to enable that feature in payables.
Yeah, even I never worked on that. So as far as I know, I think like for enabling, maybe you need to do some setups. But otherwise, after you enable, I think it should be pretty straightforward. Again, it's the same way of pushing the data into interface, AP interface, and then
Yeah,
running
yeah.
a tables open interface import program. But not sure of how to enable that XML gateway.
Pradeep, actually, you have to use the e-commerce gateway. There is a one responsibility wherein which you are going to you have a transaction numbers there like a 850, 830, 810, something like that. I think the transaction number 810 refers to the invoice outbound. So in that you have a template definition and header and the lines, how many lines you need to have in that file. So you have to define which one you are going to use. In that way, you have to configure that in the system, and you have to outbound the invoice from your system, or you have to inbound invoice from your system. So you have to configure the e-commerce gateway.
Okay, it's an
Okay,
auto
e-commerce
assumption.
gateway is the source. Okay.
Yep, e-commerce gateway will link, will interact your respective module, and then it will load into the interface tables.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Narendra.